Hello, everyone. Let me move this real quick and welcome to the 11th episode of the HSBG podcast. I'm your constant co-host, Educatedcollins. I'm here with Shady Bunny once again, our beautiful, wonderful co-host here, and ready to bring you another week of Battlegrounds action. How you doing, Shady?
I'm doing well, Collins. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Can't complain too much, necessarily. So I would say a decent mood. Ready to do this. Ready to have a good time here, talk about Battlegrounds. We always start with the weekly overview. How have things been this week? I think it's been we've had some time now with the post Quilboar meta, so we've kind of adjusted it, kind of see how strong and or weak they are. I think we're gonna talk about it later, but I think they're all right. You still see people play it. It's not like it disappeared instantly, but it is noticeably like not every game that it used to be. So I think that's helpful.
For sure. If you want, you can give your take for another moment, just because got some sound issues.
Yeah, I mean that happens. Technical difficulties from time to time, but generally, I've been having a good time with it. I've been playing a little bit, as I always do, just seeing what the meta is. I still kind of play how I like to play. I go for sixes and whatnot, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and you get punished. But a lot of times it does work out, or you're able to salvage it, and you still get the top four, or you blow people out. So nothing's really changed too much for me.
I think the sixes makes a lot of sense. Like when I've been playing, like I'm still testing, like I usually do. At the start, I'm not really full-on climbing mode yet, and something that's come to my attention, I don't know, it was just a couple of games where I pulled fives because it felt better, right? So we talked about the pure piggy meta where we said never five, never five, always six or four, get the bonker or get the Charlie. But then for a moment it went okay. But then I realized I was pulling Mithrax and Lightfang a lot. And I was like, yeah, fives are fine. And then I had a string of not pulling them. And I was like, oh, fives are awful. So yeah, right. Like I did. So it's like what Victor said, right? Like I missed the Lightfang, I missed the Mithrax. Oh no, I don't do anything, right? So I've been experimenting a bit more with, if I know I can't turn it into a six, I'm not going to take extra damage to turn it into a five, and I'll just take the four.
Okay.
Or if I can, I'll turn it into the six. So I'm probably grabbing not as many sixes as you. That would be crazy, right? But I'm grabbing, for how I play, I'm grabbing a lot of sixes. So, and because it feels like if you hit Flat Tusk, your game is just kind of solved, right? We can talk about that more when we dive in depth, but Flat Tusk just feels like the new Eliza where you're like, oh, okay, my game plan.
Flat Tusk with your particular comp is pretty nutty. Yeah, I know what comp you're talking about, but if you play Flat Tusk normally, you're not using like Earthshakers and stuff like that, then
even then, I think that Agam, the Lightfang board, I think that is the strongest comp right now when we're talking pure stats, where when you see that the top guy in the lobby has Flat Tusk Agam, especially if either of them is golden, you know that outstatting them is not an option. Like I don't care if you're double Cali, it's not big enough, right? Like they get so many stats so fast.
That's pretty much what I see people killing me with. Like if I'm gonna lose with a comp, that comp. Or dragons. Those are the ones that murdered me. But yeah, it's an interesting meta. We'll have a lot to talk about it later on. But I just wanted to get through our overview. We're going straight into the card discussion. The card we're gonna discuss today is Junkbot, cause I wanted something fun to talk about. I was like, well. I could talk about some higher roll meta card, or I could talk about Junkbot. Junkbot's been, always in the game. It's not a new card. It's been there since the game inception. It used to be a 5. No, wait. Did it always?
More a 4 than a 5.
Yeah. You're right. It used to be a 4 drop. I mean, it is now, but it also used to be, and it was a lot better in the meta back then. Mechs, I think, was like right below like the best comp, maybe like Murlocs or whatnot. Like mechs were like very consistent, very dominant, and Junkbot was, especially in the beginning, Junkbot was like the key card you used to have an edge. If you had a golden Junkbot, you won the game. Oh man, it feels so weird saying that now. If you were the one in the game with a golden Junkbot, you were like, we've won. This game is over. My 50-50 or whatever Junkbot, because everyone is full max, is gonna be what will win the game for me, you know. And then the Fire Nation attacked, the Blizzard meta removal team attacked, and they nerfed Junkbot, moved it to 5. They nerfed mechs. They removed Kobold Guardian, replaced it with its brother. You know, not as loved brother, but you know, still loved relatively, because people still play it, and things like that. And they also introduced new archetypes that could scale on par or even better than mechs. So you know, mechs had a rude awakening. You know, woke up from its dream and it's like, I'm not the, you know, the tier 1 or tier 0 comp I used to be. But it doesn't mean that there's no hope for Junkbot, right? You know, people started making memes, Junkbot being junk and whatnot. But you know, there have been some games even recently where I've had a couple of Junkbots, and I think even now, since it got moved to 4, I wouldn't say I see a lot of Junkbots. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that at all. But I fought some Junkbots where I'm like, oh, this is not the worst. Or so. I remember a particular game when I was Reno, and I didn't have a direction. I hero powered a Junkbot, and I won the game. I won the game. And I was just like, wow, is this real? You know, but it can be done. I would say it's very rare, and I wouldn't listen to my story and start hero powering Junkbots. No. Don't copy me. But they do exist, and it is an interesting card how it is transformed throughout the meta and transformed throughout its nerf and buff cycle.
I think the last time I did well with a Junkbot was in the spell meta, where I just played Kale and I just had golden Junkbot, spare Junkbot, and then just menace on everything. You know how it is, and then everything that dies spawns more mechs, and they're just in the back, just buff.
Pretty much, it was like deflecto. You know, I have senseis. You
don't even have to say it.
I had like an egg and like golden Junkbot, another Junkbot. Everything had like menace on it. You know, like almost everything had a menace on it. So it was good enough, but very rare composition that you wouldn't see at all. But I thought it was something to discuss.
Yeah, I did play at the start as well.
Your voice is muted.
Oh, sorry. Are we good now or no?
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay, so I did play at the start as well when mechs were so dominant, like, and then I took a long break from BGs, but it was very funny where well, in that regard, not much has changed, because viewers would ask me, why are you not leveling to 5? And I was just like, there's no reason, because Junkbot is on 4, and all I'm doing is buying Middle Tooth Leapers for these Kobold Guardians, making them stronger, getting more eggs, but it was egg on 5? Egg was on 5, I think, right?
Yeah, egg used to be on 5.
Yeah, so you weren't even playing eggs, you were just doing other stuff. You were just basically trying to make golden Junkbot and then the next one. And it was so funny that was a very, very dominant strategy where people were just fishing for Junkbot the whole time. When you think of Junkbot now, after all the power creep, after how the heroes are kind of crazy, people just shooting for the moon the whole time. But there was a time where you just snap 2 Junkbots, you'd be like, easy first. All right, let's go. You get the tier 4, like snap 2 Junks. All right, easy game.
That was my time where I was just like, yeah, because I mean, that was one of those metas where I didn't need to level the 6s and stuff like that if I got early junk. But you still do this now, honestly. If you get like 2 early junk bots, I mean, not chunk bot, early deflector. I meant like you get.
I skipped those. So.
Yeah, you get 2 early deflectors. you kind of like are incentivized as long as you don't have like a real clear direction or like a free triple set up in the shop or something like that to just go and see if you can salvage the game with mechs, especially if you have like if mechs are what your board looks like already. You know, if you have deflector reset, you like there's no need to hope level to 5 hope you hit something, right? So you know, I'm sure you know that about that a lot, but
I've done it once or twice.
but yeah, I just wanted to, you know, talk about it. An old favorite of ours, Junkbot. However, let's move on to the hero of choice for this week. We'll be talking about Captain Hooktusk. So I remember when this card was reintroduced with its small nerf, right, where instead of discovering 3, you discover 2. I was saying I don't know if it will be good enough of a nerf. It might still be strong because you can theoretically do exactly what you could do before. It's just less viable. And I do think that that's kind of been true in a sense where at least the Hooktusk high roll games that I see or I play, right, it's essentially the same feeling of being able to level or get free money or abuse triples even later in the game and just getting early like 5s or 6 or something like that. I had a Hooktusk game where, you know, I start the game with like 4 minions on, you know, when I level, and then I just level it again and got a triple instant 4 drop, you know, like on turn 5 or was it 5 or 3 or 6 or something like that, super early. 4, and then I got another triple, got like a 5 or a 6, and I was just like, yeah, this is not a game. You know, I have already so far ahead of the competition, it's not even close. But it is true you can't do that as reliably, right? I definitely think, and another thing to think about is what minions are out of the pool, right? So when beasts are out, when murlocs are out, right, and when elementals, in a sense, I would say beast murlocs are the most important, right? But when those two are out, right, it's a lot harder to get that consistent early free gold and things like that. So you really have to take a look at what minions are in the pool when you pick this. If I mean, you can play it regardless, right? But when they're out, it's noticeable. Whereas if you know some, like, I don't know what is if Quilboars are out, but if some of the other archetypes are out,
I think Quilboars still okay.
Yeah, they're always in. I was just making a joke, but
no, I get you. But like for Hooktusk, right? Because you can hero power into Bacon Guy and then just sell and like, oh, +2 on my something for free. Like that's all the time with Hooktusk. Where I'm just, you know, unless of course you get money, right? You take the money, but free +2 on something is great. So getting the Bacon Guy is not even bad for me.
That's true. So I do think right now it's doing really well in the standings in terms of just stats, and I'm not surprised, right? I do think its high roll potential is high, and especially when competent players are playing him, right, or playing her. There's a lot of strategy you can use to manipulate your advantages, utilizing the gold advantages and whatnot. So definitely been a very strong hero. I haven't gotten to play her as much as I want to, just because they don't give me the good heroes. You know, Chad. Like I play like so many games, and like I'll have like one good hero and like 5 games, and I'm just like, why? You know, why do I have to suffer? But yeah, I you know, every time I do get the player and the minion types that I want her in, it does feel quite strong, quite broken, quite good. So I don't think the nerf was like, I wouldn't like nerf. I don't know if I would at this current time nerf her again, right? I think it's okay. She's not the strongest in terms of stats, but I do think she is very strong. And when she high rolls hard. So that's my thoughts there.
For sure. Yeah, there's a very, very high ceiling, right? It's not, you know, as long as you hit the right minions the whole time, you can just get insane setups, right? Just get triples, you get money. So minion types when I'm playing, usually the 4 I'm looking out for is Murlocs and Beasts, as you mentioned, and that way she's a bit like a Janice, where if you don't have those in, she goes from batshit crazy to better than the other guys. So you still pick her, but it's not like, wow, you know, amazing Hooktusk. and the other two are elementals and pirates.
The
Elementals,
gold.
like you mentioned, right? You like this elemental, you like the 1/3, the reroll. But then pirates getting swabby oftentimes just smooths out your curve so much, where you just, it's like, oh my god. A lot of the time this happens on 5 gold, where you're like, the level costs 3 and the minion costs 3, and you're like, and then you shoot it, it turns into a swabby, you're like, that solves it. All right, level by the thing. Like that happens so often.
And Quilboars, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it feels like, the bacon guy feels like a miss, but still, you're never sad. You're like, oh, I guess 3+2+2 on something. It keeps her healthy while you're fishing for triples. So, but when you play her, in the limited exposure you've had, what's your curve like usually? Are you staying on 1 for a round, for 2 rounds? Are you leveling on 4 golds? Like, what's usually the game plan?
I level on 4 gold. I'm a traditional leveler in that even with Omu, I'm hard pressed to stay on, even though I know I could. It's very, I'm very hard. I'm very normal in that aspect. I know a lot of people like to do some fancy stuff. I do the fancy stuff later on in the game.
Sure. No, I think that suits your game plan more, where you're like, well, this is what I do with the other guys. Now it's just better, right? I have more money. I have more triple potential. And I think that's fair. And I do that a decent amount myself. I think the times when I stay is, let's say your first buy is a dud, where you just say, okay, I'm not getting the Murloc token. I'm not getting the cat token. I'm not getting anything fancy.
Right.
So I'll just buy a whelp and I'll hero power the whelp. And then it doesn't turn into something I'm super excited about hero powering next turn. I'll usually, obviously look at the shop. And then if the shop has something, let's say like an alley cat, I will definitely not level on that turn. I'll just buy the alley cat, shoot the token, see what I get, and maybe just like roll freeze setup, because it feels like that increases the triple potential so much. Whereas if you have a bad start, a lot of the time, what do you do, right? So you're leveling on 4 gold. You had a bad minion that didn't turn into anything fancy. You hero power it, and then even if you hit a token minion, which is ideal, next turn you're stuck hero powering the main token most of the time, unless you're buying something specifically to hero power.
You end up playing normal. You're not using.
You're not doing the Hooktusk thing, right? You're not like gathering alley cats or gathering Tidehunters. So I think that's the main problem I have with it. And even when you stay, usually it's only 1 turn you need to get that cool Hooktusk board going, and then all you need to do is pay 1 extra gold at some point to level, and you're back on curve. And because you're just making swabbies, you're making extra tokens, it's usually nowhere near a problem to catch up. So I stay on 1 if I don't really like where it's going, because I'm playing a really good hero, and I don't want her to just be a regular, I might get an extra gold here or there. But if I say open up with the token, I hero power the token, I get more money, I'm just like, okay, love it. Right? There's no need to stay. Let's just go, right? Let's just be strong. Let's just do all the cool stuff. So yeah, she's really good and really fun. And it's rare that you say like, I played that Hooktusk game perfectly. It's like, I don't know, man. Like, in the late game, you just start hero powering things because it's like, probably this one. I don't know, right? It's like, I guess I'll get a 5-drop, maybe.
That's very fair. I'll definitely keep that in mind as well. I always like listening to your what do I do if I don't get everything I want strategies. I'm very much I've got everything I want. Let's go. You're always like, what if you don't get everything you want, Collins? I'm just like
protecting the downside. It's good for Elo.
I haven't thought about not getting what I want, Shady.
You tried just hitting, Shady.
So that's a very good point. I'll keep that in mind for sure. But I do think it's very powerful here, very strong, very consistent, especially if the tokens are in. You can abuse leveling, you can get early triples, you can make free money. A lot of advantages with this hero, and results speak for themselves. So I think it's a strong hero if you haven't been playing her. She is kind of complicated in that you have to be aware of, you have to track gold, you have to track tripling potential, you have to make sure that you know what you're going to do next turn, right? So and you know what you're going to do if you hit what you want or what you don't want, right? So if you have a pair and you hit the pair, right, sometimes people are like, oh no, now I have the triple, I didn't want to level here, I didn't want to get this this tavern tier minion, right? Where sometimes it's better not to get that triple that turn, wait and see if you can, wait a turn, try to get the triple afterwards if you want a higher tier minion or something like that. So there's little things, but I think that just comes as you play the hero more and more. You get more familiar with these situations that might arise. So definitely recommend the hero there and see if you want to play it. Next,
I'll still chip in a little bit. Sorry,
Okay.
like the what you mentioned about what you're going to do next turn. I think if you're overwhelmed by playing Hooktusk, one of the biggest things you can do is ask yourself, okay, what am I hero powering next turn? Because almost all of the time when you're stuck with Hooktusk is because you didn't plan, right? You're like, oh, I'll do this one. Oh no, but wait, I could triple it. Oh, but do this one. Ah, but that's my spawn. I can't really sell my spawn because then I'm too weak. And so usually you want to look at your discovery for the turn and the purchases you're making in the shop for the turn so that you're set up for the turn afterwards, that you know that you have a target that you're comfortable hero powering. So sometimes it'll be, well, I could take this micro mummy, or I could take this, or even the sunbacon is a good example where, sure, sunbacon is great to play, but you can't hero power it because then you lose all the advantage that it has because you need to sell it. So in that regard, that if you don't have a hero power target, it's probably not good to take sunbacon and just take, I don't know, let's say the regular 2/3 dragon, so that you're having a little bit more combat stats for that turn, and then you can shoot it after. Or preferably you take something that has a battle cry like a Swabby or the reroll elemental or whatnot. And I guess another thing, sorry, I'll leave this one to you. I'll ask you the question. For anyone that's not really familiar with Hooktusk, let's say, they say, oh, well, people say it's the same thing with Janus, like, oh, Janus is so good, but why? Like, what is the general game plan on Hooktusk? Because I don't think we really covered that. As in, what are you trying to accomplish?
I think, well, I mean, for me, right, a lot of my plans are to get an early game advantage or an early directional unit that I can use to facilitate the rest of my board, right? So like if I can get like a Nomi turn 7, I mean not turn 7, but like turn 5, right? And I can just hero power, get free elementals from Hooktusk, right? Like that's super clean, right? Once I get that minion, I know what the rest of my game plan is, right? Same thing if I get early Caligos, right? Once I get that, it's like turn 6 or whatever, like some super crazy early turn, right? I know what the rest of my game plan is, right? The hard part is getting there safely, getting there with direction or with other supplemental units, right? Like let's say you go for an early like 6s, you get 2 6s, right? You have you have just a rag, right? Right. If you have another option to get a 6, right, and then you have a genie, then you're good to go, right? Then you can do something rag genie, right? That's really consistent scaling, even if you don't hit other things, right? But if you just have the rag, right, that's not really enough a lot of the time, right? You'll just have the rag and you're like, oh, I got a 6, it's a rag, and you don't hit anything and you die, right? So it's setting up a position where you have the directional pieces that make sense for you to play the game out how cleanly from there. So the early you can get those pieces, the better, right? Because then you're getting them before people can like punish you before you can scale. So that's usually my game plan with a lot of the high tier heroes, right? Getting that directional piece early, usually through triples, usually through some heroes can just level and roll into it, right? But that's not.
That doesn't happen.
I do that sometimes. Some heroes can level and just roll into it, but a lot of the heroes, that are the cleanest way is to just triple into it early enough. So those are usually my game plans. So having pairs, having powerful units that can allow you to level as well can work really well, right? So sometimes I'll get like an early gold grubber and like 2 golden like a Murloc triple or something, right? And then that in itself, right, I'm getting like free, 6/6 or 4/4 whatever per turn, right? It might allow me to level up a turn earlier and not take damage, where if I didn't have that gold grubber, I would be taking 10 plus damage. So
I guess the main thing is a balance where you know that you are holding those pairs and you know that you're trying to triple into the key units, But especially if a triple comes, I'd say the earliest you'd want to take is probably 4.
Or
most
right,
of the
yeah,
time,
yeah.
where you'll just find a way. Sometimes you just blatantly hold it in your hand and say, "Screw it, I'll just take damage this turn. I'll level next turn. I'm not grabbing a 3." Because sometimes,
The only
sometimes the hero card is
times
a choice.
I get like a 3 is like turn 5 or no turn 3 or something, or like immediately, where it's hard to avoid getting a 3, right? Sometimes you're playing like Reform or something. You're leveled by hero power,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And then
But I mean, on her, you can just not take the triple as well,
okay.
right?
Oh, you're talking about only Hooktusk. I'm just
I'm
like,
talking about just
okay, yeah,
stuff.
fair enough. Yeah, then 4 makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. Yeah, I guess that's it. So you want to collect pairs. You want to also look at the strength of your board, and sometimes you're going to have to take a 4 to be able to survive to turn those other pairs into 6 drops. Some games, everything is just going to click. You're just going to randomly get like, oh, I bought a spawn in the shop and I have 2 pairs, and then my Elemental is gonna triple, so I make money, right, with the triple where I just have to sell it off the board, and you just get 2 6s straight away. That happens as well, and then you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna crush this lobby. So I guess there's 2 ways of getting there. There's just finding the power units on the way to stay alive, like for instance a spawn, or sometimes a tough tusk, and then you get gems from a bacon guy or a geomancer that you roll into the 3/1 that gives you a gem, and you're just like straight to 5, cash in my triples. I think it's on, what is that, 8 gold or something that I'm leveling, or something silly, right? There's something silly where you're just
Right.
pushing
Yeah.
and you're just grabbing 6 drops. Like you're
8
just
gold
straight
is
to 5,
usually
I think.
happens.
8 gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you just, and then it's just crazy. You just pop off like crazy after that.
I saw someone with a 6 drop on turn 5, and I was just like, how? What are you doing? How you get there? He sold everything, I think, to he had like 3 units, and he beat me. I was just like, no, this isn't right. But yeah, it happens. He had an mama, so that's why he beat me. But yeah. But generally, anyways, we've talked a lot about Hooktusk, but
Yeah.
interesting hero. Next topic we have is we want to discuss Quilboars post nerf. So now that Quilboars have been in the game a lot, for a while, we've kind of seen how do Quilboars play, how good are they still played right? Sometimes minion types will get nerfed and then they disappear from the meta. I don't really think that's happened with Quilboars. I do also think that you don't see Quilboars every game, or Quilboars aren't, like, if you look at the minion activity from your opponents, right? In every game, Quilboars are in every game, but they're not going to be represented in every game. But I do, however, think that some of the strongest compositions include Quilboars in some capacity. So it's not like they've relatively disappeared. I do want to think, I think the most important reason why it's not like everyone's running hyper roll tier 6, 5, 6 Quilboar competitions, I think the most important reason is because the MMR has settled down. Now that you're not getting like rewarded, right? If you lose, you're gonna lose a lot of MMR, right? People aren't going like, I'll just level to 6, see if I hit it, if I don't hit it, I don't care, right? People now care, right? So they're playing a lot safer. You're seeing a lot of people like staying on 4, trying to go for a more regular scaling comp, things like that. I've seen a lot more weaker compositions this week than, than the last week, because people aren't just like going super donkey leveling and then just like seeing if they hit it. If they don't hit it, they don't care, right? People start caring, so they're playing safer. So I think that's a really important reason why it doesn't look as crazy anymore. Not to say that people aren't hitting the nuts, right? I always see reforms with like golden 6 drops, 2 golden 6 drops, and I'm just like, yep, that's reform. And I'm just like, it's like turn 10. Why do you have this? But yeah, the high roll potential is still there. However, it's not common. It's definitely a high roll. It's not like a every game thing. But the Quilboars are still pretty good. Bonkers definitely toned down a little bit. You don't see all the bonkers. Tough Tusk still played, but it's not like, oh, I mean, it's like really good early, and then mid game it's like whatever, and then sometimes in the late game you might see it, but it's like you're not like scared of a tough tusk or a bristleback or any of those like early scaling units unless you see them early. So
I think the ones you're afraid of is people at power level and they get Bannerbore Brute. And you're just like, yeah, okay, that's just gonna sit there and get bigger and bigger.
Right.
Or just any early brute when they have like a bacon guy to sell or something like that. I'd say that's probably the one where if I'm power leveling, that's what I'm looking for. Brute plus synergy, because I can carry for a long time. But a banner boar in isolation, right? That used to be a snap before the nerf. Now, not so much.
Yeah. So things are a little bit different. Have you noticed anything in particular with Quilboars?
Yeah. So I will say that the strongest composition, we talked about it a bit before, right? It's just Flat Tusk Agam. I think if you get those two cards together, Agam is the Light Fang Quilboar, and Tough Tusk is the whenever you spend 3 gold, you get a blood gem. Those two just scale your entire board faster than anything out there right now. So whenever I'm shooting for a 6-drop, that's pretty much what I'm aiming for. I'm looking for Tough Tusk because either you can pump Shaker or you can pump Agam, or it's not even the worst thing ever to just have, say, a Pumbaa on the board, so your gems are +2/+2, and you just gem in a Deflecto, and you're saying, well, every turn this Deflecto gets +10/+10 or something like that. So it seems like there is no real downside to shooting for a Flat Tusk. Let's say when you're shooting for a Kali, you have that weakness where you need to transition into a dragon board, so you don't really want to do it unless your board has dragons on it. With Flat Tusk, there isn't really a board where I say, oh, I can't support a Flat Tusk. The same thing with Eliza. You know, like, oh, this board can't support Eliza. Eliza supports the board. She just sits there. She's like, I'm here, right? I'm going to carry you guys. And it feels the same thing with Flat Tusk, where sure, on the very, very turn you get her, especially if you can't spend any more gold, she's just, what is it, a 9/6 or so. But then directly the turn after, there is insane potential if you roll into a Shaker. She just carries round after round, where you don't have to really worry about losing because pretty much your entire board gets poisoned when you have an early Shaker Flat Tusk. You get 4 or 5 triggers a turn. And then if you get Agam, or especially if you're doing something silly, I think I got like a Zephyrus where I was able to hero power Agam early after tripling into a Flat Tusk, and then every gem is +2/+2 on your different types. You might even run a duo so that the duo is also soaking if you don't have the perfect menagerie setup. So I will say, in terms of Quilboars, that is by far the scariest thing out there, especially on a millhouse. It's so nutty, right? Millhouse, just buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell, gem, 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 buff, 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 buff. So a millhouse with Flat Tusk and Agam is just nutty, super, super strong. And then she works really well with Shaker. And then the other, yeah, go
I
ahead.
haven't played Millhouse. That's all.
Right, yeah. Millhouse is a different discussion. I feel like I've been hitting my triples, so it's been great, but it feels a little weird, obviously, when you're sitting on 9 gold, usually, right? You level to 4 on 8 gold, and on 9 gold, you're like, all right, triple. So I can level to 6, I can level to 5, pull my 6. No? Okay, no, okay. So usually I'll just roll on 4 and then, try to still get the 6 up the turn after.
Makes sense. Yeah. I fought a Millhouse with that comp, and I was like, how is he so strong? And now it makes sense.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You just know, like, the Millhouse just buys the shop the whole time, right?
Yeah.
And if you have a brand, oh my god, right? You get brand Murazon, you're like, oh, print money, oh, let's go. Just brand with a gem generator. Dun, 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 dun. You just, oh my god. The only reason it's a little bit awkward is because board space is very premium when you're playing this comp, right? Because you have to play 2 boards to begin with, and you're a menagerie. So then if you're running the brand, that means you only have 4 other slots, and you're probably going to want a buff slot as well. So it means you can only run 3 other types, which is totally fine, right? If you can get Divine Shield Dragon, Divine Shield Elemental, Murloc, or an Amalgadon or whatnot, and then the rest
you gotta
is
have a cleave, right? Cleave.
Yeah. Let's say beasts are out. Let's say mechs are out. But yeah, no, obviously, as many shields as you can, as many cleaves as you can, and then it scales like crazy. It's definitely up to your opponent at that point to beat you, because you will win the stat war. They will need to do poison scam. So a lot of the time you can already just start holding Selfless in your hand because you get rewarded for buying minions anyway. And then you can just transfer out of your buff slot or whatever you had to run a golden Selfless and look for the Baron.
Sounds good. Any other Quilboars that are interesting to talk about, and now that a week has passed, that like
Well,
you've been
yeah.
surprised about, or
So specifically, I guess so. There's two things. I've already talked about it, and we'll talk about it more later as well. The
the
ground
one
shaker
for?
comp.
Oh, okay.
Well, the ground shaker comp for me is definitely a steady go-to whenever
Mm-hmm.
I have the pieces required. But there'll be a topic later on where I'll cover a little bit of that. So I'm not going to go too in depth. But I will say that the Divine Shield Quilboar for me has been great to triple into whenever I'm playing a more tempo-oriented hero and I really want Divine Shields. So let's say I'm playing Rakunishu, getting that one is like, ooh, that's tasty, right? That's +4/+4 on that thing every round. You're playing Mukla, and you've been like a lot of the times I'll gather 2 micro mummies when I'm playing Mukla, and then I'll freeze the third one in the shop. I hit 9 gold. I've leveled to 4 the turn before that. I buy the mummy, triple into the shield, unload all the bananas on there. Boom, big ass bristleback knight, I believe she's called. I'm not sure,
Yes,
but
yes.
so that is very, very. I will say that card definitely comes in handy when you just need a carry, right? You need something to absorb buffs. So I've gotten more respect for that card because she can really do some nasty things. Where if she gets this, the second hit is always the one where you're like, hold your breath, don't kill yourself. Okay, she hit a token. It's fine. We get the shield again. So nice.
Yeah, dude, that card is nuts. Honestly, when you can like, usually what happens is I have a bunch of gems on something, and I take 2 gems and I fuse them into the bristleback, and I'm just like, yes, 100 or 80 bristleback, let's go. And then it solos the enemy board, and I'm just like, how is this right? Like, but
Yeah, no poison is GG at that point for
yeah,
sure.
it's so ridiculous. So I like it's a deflector in a sense, sometimes on steroids because it has better base stats, but the reset is nice. It just allows you to beat up, like if you have a similar tempo board and someone has and you have the bristleback, right, you're getting that 3-for-1 or sometimes 4-for-1, where the other person gets that 2-for-1 or 1-for-1 with their minions, right? So you're getting like that could be the difference maker a lot of times. So I do think it's a very good card when it has stats uh into it, right? I think if you're playing Menagerie, it's the best one to pick up for just
Yeah, for
a
sure.
clean Menagerie. So I do like the card. I think it makes a lot of sense. And
I guess something to talk about is Charlie, right? Like, how has Charlie been for you? Now that he's a 4/4 and doesn't buff himself.
I still pick them. I still but it's not like the issue is it's not pick them and do nothing. Pick them and I won. Like it's more pick them. Oh, now I need like the beast synergy. Da 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 da. I need divine shield synergy. Da da da. It's not gonna win the game, and then like later on you sell him to put like a selfless in, right? So uh, it's you can't keep him, right? He's not a part of the key comp.
Yeah,
These days, but if you can get them early, the problem a lot of times the main issue is you'll get that Charlie and then you don't have any buff targets, right? So you still have to look for the buff targets, right? If you get the Charlie and you already have like 3 divine shields, right? You're like, okay, like I'm gonna keep these minions, right? So that I'm getting value with it, right? But a lot of times you'll look at your board and it's like, okay, there's a Charlie here, I get it, and then I don't have any minions I want to keep, right? So you're just like, I hope I hit something directly, or you'll see like a cleave in the shop or like a Hydra, right? And it's like, oh, it's a 3/3 Hydra, like a 3/5 Hydra. Woo, yeah, it doesn't do
yeah.
anything.
It doesn't feel fast enough, right? A
Yeah.
lot of the time.
So
I'd say for me, it's just been like, okay, I guess it'll proc my shaker? Question mark. Right. So it's just been very, very much like get it and then sell it whenever I need board space, pretty much immediately.
anytime it's good, I have other synergies with it. Like usually it's like Charlene and the double and then the beast, right? And I'm playing like Menagerie or something like that, and then I'm just like running
Yeah.
in Menagerie comp with that as like an engine, an extra engine or something, and then it's like
Yeah.
okay,
Sure.
yeah,
I
but
think it's very, like you mentioned, good complementary where, oh, that can be my Quilboar and my Beast. right? And you're like, oh, cool, then I'll just double dip, right? Where my Light Fang or my Brand is going to buff. And then I'm getting another +2/+2 from a Charlie and a Boar. But it feels like way too much investment to have that be your engine, right? And then like the rest, just I feel like that's not even great where you're just building a board of, it feels like that's too slow, right? Where you get the Charlie, then you have to look for the Beast, then you have to start putting Divine Shields on your board, like you mentioned.
I need all of that already. You know, it by itself is too slow. It's, like, I didn't think it not buffing itself would be that big, as well as the base stats. I didn't think those changes would be like that big of a nerf, but it ended up being, where I'm like, oh, I don't like, instead of having like the minion to rely on and then all the buffs, right? It's like I don't have a minion to rely on, so I just die to an M-Mom. It just solos everything. Yes, instead of having that 8/8 to like, or 9/9 to one shot the minions, right? It's getting free value and things like that. So I think that has been like the surprising, or the most surprising nerf that's been active, where I'm like, oh well, actually effective. You know, I thought that Charlie plus the Beast would still be OP, and it is. Like, to be fair, it is still really good if you can get both of them, right? But I thought like it wouldn't change anything, in a sense where like, oh, you get it, you still insta win. Now you get it, it's not insta win. You still have to work. You still have to think about what you're gonna do with your board, or what you're gonna add to the board. So yeah.
Right.
Any extras? No.
I'm going over the list mentally. I think we've had most of the boars where, like, early, you're still happy to get that brute.
Yeah, you still don't like the road boar. Just
so road boar, I think the nerf definitely hit it, and it's not like I have too big of an issue with it right now.
Okay.
It's annoying when someone, let's say, gets it early on the very first shop, 5 gold, especially if that someone is, say, a Kael'thas or anyone that had a bacon guy, so you get the instant +2/+2. I think it's still just dumb that a card is scaling that early on. But now that it's a 1/4, you have a bad fight at least, right? So you have to at least look at it and be like, huh? Because then if you take it as a 1/4 and then for some reason someone's gonna 4/4 taunt, you're just like, oh
yeah, you're screwed.
Yeah, this thing is not gonna do anything anymore. So yeah, like making it into a 1/4, at least now there is some thought to it. Whereas before it'd be like Robo Snap, right? Like insta, let's go. Because it was just, you know, the Murloc is a 2/4, right? Obviously, you know, it has an effect where it scales as more Murlocs are on the board, but oftentimes you're just like, okay, I guess a 2/4 body will have to do. And, you know, a 2/4 body that scales, it's insane. So now that it's a 1/4, at least you have to give it a little bit of consideration.
Okay. That's the one I wanted to see if things had changed there. Our next topic shall be best 6-drop units. This is theoretically the last of the series, unless there's best 7-drop units coming in next turn, which, you know, it might happen. We'll see. But here I was also having a little bit of issue figuring out what to put in here. I bet you'd be happy if I had a flat tusk instead of the Charles, right? Now that I think right. Of course. I knew.
She's meta.
I figured I'd put that in as like a stand-in for both of them. You know, like, oh yeah, we'll talk about Quilboars. Yeah, but other than that, you know, there are a lot of 6-drops, right? 6-drops are where a lot of the directional units can be where the most powerful units should be, right? Not always true sometimes when they get balanced wrong, you know, genies and whatnot, but a lot of times this is where you want to find things that can facilitate your game plan or be the difference maker in battles, right? So, you know, Foe Reaper can be the difference maker. Boats can be the difference maker in Mamas, you know, things like that, as well as Caligos, Eliza, Flat Tusk, Charles, right? Those can facilitate your game plan. Maybe Charles a little bit less, but Flat Tusk for sure. Goldrin, there's a lot of them out there that can be, once you get this particular piece, then you're like, okay, I know what to do with the rest of my board, right? I can go from there. So, and then always Amalgadon, I would still say one of the best cards, if not the best card in the game, right? Where Divine Shield, Golden Amalgadon, 2-for-1s every time, pretty much, and has that consistency factor. And sometimes the plants are like the difference maker. I've had a couple of games where, at first I'm like, plants, why? And then like the plants are the one thing that gives you like the damage you need to kill. You're like, plants, yes, And then sometimes you put the Amalgadon early so that it dies early, and then the plants can pop Divine Shields for you or something like that. And that can be the difference maker. So there's a bit of variability or variety where you can adjust how you utilize the Amalgadon based on what adapts you get. So there's a lot to it. It's also a battle cry, synergize with Caligos, synergize with every comp, really. Like I'm never really sad that I have a Divine Shield, Poison, Amalgadon. Like, this
any comp. I guess maybe it's like scam comp where you can't afford to have it on your board, but for the pirate scam in that case. Obviously, poison scam and Divine Shield poison. Different scam comp. So when you're talking about Amalgadon, I think for sixes, a lot of it for me is evaluation. How happy am I tripling into this early, right? But there's a difference between how happy am I tripling into this early and then just picking it up later once you already have your comp.
See, I do both. So
that's why
not,
this
is a lot harder for me, I'm sure when you come to best 4-drop units, you have a lot to say.
No, I guess what I'm trying to ask is when you see an Amalgadon in the discovery pool early, and let's say you got like 3 adapts or so, like where does that rank for you? Is it like, don't really like it, or sweet?
I will not take it if there's a better directional unit. So Amalgadons are more like late game finishers. Like I finish the board with an Amalgadon. Where if it's early, I've got like 4 dragons, easy Caligos. If I have a Swabby, easy Eliza. Even if I don't have a Swabby, easy Eliza. I've got a Hooktusk. A Flat Tusk. Okay, I know what to do there. Let me start jamming the Blood Gems. Charles, I better hope I have synergy, and my minions I want to keep. Things like that, right? For Reaper, that one I pick early sometimes because I'm like, this I can keep and go into a Menagerie, and this will be like my base, and I can buff it with a Divine Shield, with a Divine Shield, and then go from there. And that's like, it's like a base of a Menagerie without having the Menagerie, but the other options aren't any direction at all, right? This one can be direction. Sometimes you just pick it up and you find a better strategy, and then you just have a Fur Reaper for a while, and it's like, okay, it's still a cleave, whatever, it's fine. Boat, same thing, right? You have a boat for a while, and it's like, keep me healthy, right? Sometimes, you get a boat, let's level to 6. Hey, the boat can be alive, and it works. So, that kind of thing. Goldrin, if you have a Macaw, Goldrin, easy direction there. And Imp Mama, sometimes you're running jugglers, and then you look like, sometimes you're running jugglers, you don't need a 6, but if you get a 6 and it's like Imp Mama, okay, that will clean out my composition there. So Amalgadon is good. I like finishing with it, but I do pick it up early if I don't have any direction, right? Like if the other units aren't better, and then if there is a direction and it makes sense, then I'll take the direction over the Amalgadon.
Yeah, I guess the like when I talk about 6-drops, the vast majority of the time it will be, I found a triple, I went to 5 and I pulled the 6-drop, right? So that's usually the context I'm talking about when I'm referring to 6-drops. And in that context, the top hits for me would be, obviously, it's dependent on what your board looks like, but in a vacuum, it would be Flat Tusk, number 1, just because there are those 2 cards we mentioned.
I want to guess for you, but yeah, go for it.
Right, okay, yeah, sure. Okay, why not? Go ahead. All right, make my list. Make my top 5. There we go.
Top 5, huh?
Yeah, what's my top 5?
Okay, Flat Tusk, number 1. Eliza, number 2, right? That's probably easy. Number 3, it starts going into like tempo stuff even.
It's a little bit also depends on your boards, right? So it's hard to call.
So maybe Caligos, and then I wonder what you want for tempo. Even Amalgadon would be there, and then like, is it boat or is it like gas crawler, boat, that kind of stuff?
Imp Mama. I
Imp
think
Mama, gas color boat Imp Mama. Okay, yeah, okay.
So usually I'll go like Flatus Kaliza. Those are the easy ones, right? We're like, oh, they're really good. Then for me, Imp Mama is like a really solid third. Obviously, you know, like Goldrin is the pick if there's like a Macaw in the shop and stuff, but that's all situational, right? We're talking about you don't have any real feedback. Like especially you mentioned Juggler for Imp Mama, but Harbinger is the nuts.
Right, that's I forgot about that. You're right. Yeah.
She again gets buffed by the taunt. The taunt is a Void Lord. You're like, oh, so many buffs. So it's really good.
Chad is always like, Collins, you skip Harbinger. Shady would be so sad.
Yeah, dude.
Oh man, I'm just like, yeah, whatever.
So Foe Reaper is definitely up there as well, by the way, because like you mentioned, it's just you're never really sad to have the Foe Reaper, right? Whereas some 6-drops you pull them, you're like, might have to sell it later, right? Whereas with a Foe Reaper, that's not the case. So I guess we got Flat Tusk, Eliza, then Imp Mama, Foe Reaper, Gas Coiler. I believe that would be it. And then Boat's definitely up there. Like if you need a pick me up, right? Essentially, if you whiff, right, you don't get what you want.
So I was completely wrong.
I mean, you mentioned Tally,
Eliza, and then all tempo.
I mean, obviously. Let's say I have 3 dragons on my board.
I know, but this makes sense to me, like from your standpoint. Just all tempo afterwards.
If you would do like poll or like an analysis of which 6-drops I take, I'm pretty sure it'd be roughly that order, right?
It's literally all tempo, actually. Let's be honest. It's like Eliza's tempo.
It has insane scaling option.
Yeah, but it's tempo too. You just pick it and you're like, ground shaker, agam, let's just tempo it out. You know, it's just all tempo. It's really
you know me, man. That's all.
Fair enough. Where I'm just like, direction. Okay, I'll take Caligos. Okay, I'll take Goldrin. Okay, I'll take like without any. I mean, I'll take Charles. You know, oh yeah, give me Charles. You know, you're just like, no, give me Flatus. I think it's interesting.
Makes this game so fun, man. There's just different ways to play as well.
Yeah, so, very fair.
Complements that really well.
All right, so that's our thoughts on 6-drops. I think so. We've done all of them so far, but I feel like it's still raw. Like there's still like more to talk about, and especially with like meta shifts and stuff like that, right? Sometimes that can change things a little bit too.
Absolutely.
But generally, I would say the good units stay good. I wouldn't necessarily say that bad units become good all too often without any nerfs or things like that, and or good units become bad all too often without nerfs, right? Tokens have been good since the beginning. Spawn's been good since the beginning, right? There's only when pew pew cannon came in, right, where you're like, I'd rather have that over a spawn. But before it was like just spawn all the time. For 3s, like, Deflecto has always been good. Kobold, right? Same thing, right? When Bronze Warden came in, right, it was pretty much good from the get-go, right? It never was like became bad or anything, right? So the good units kind of, they retain their value, right? There's something about them that make them playable, right? So I wouldn't necessarily say that the minions that we talk about in like 2 months, 3 months from now would be like, do you remember when we said Foe Reaper was a good card? What a joke, right? Like it's not very likely to happen, right? There's always something intrinsic about like having a cleave or having some scaling that retains its value. So I do think if you have listened to all of them, right, there, you should be able to identify what makes a card good, right? Like why is this good, right? It has Divine Shield, it has Cleave, it has good base stats, and you like, and even when new cards pop up, right, like a new 3-drop, right, a new blah blah blah, right, based on like experience and like looking at the stats, you should be able to like, okay, this was an okay card. I mean, we just did have a expansion, and we weren't always right. Right on a lot of them, so that goes without saying. Not everything's gonna be perfect, and you do have to play with them to really understand how good a card is. But it should be easier to get an idea of how good a card will be based on just its stats and how things look. So I do think that is very interesting. Anyways, next topic we shall be talking about a Reddit post that our good friend Chitty made called "Confessions of a Scammer." You know, we posted in Bob's Tavern. I think it was a very interesting read about how to play the meta, especially if you really value tempo. You don't like that high roll gameplay that I like play a lot, right? Where if you don't hit something perfect, right, you're really gonna struggle to salvage the game or something like that, or you lose outright if you don't find the right hits, right? This is a more very consistent, very clean, gradual power scaling where you can very easily get top fours a lot, and then if you get lucky, you don't even need to get lucky. If you just find the right pieces, you can clean out a top two, a top one sometimes, depending on how strong your opponents have, how nutty they are. So I didn't write this, so I don't know why I'm talking about it. But
yeah, I'll get
yeah, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, so I just felt like writing like the start of the week, where just like, all right, well, let's just see where this goes. I didn't even know I was gonna write this particular thing, but it's like, all right, let's just write about the meta. And then the biggest thing that really clicked for me was just not leveling to 5 unless thought there was a very clear reason that I was allowed to do that. Obviously, there's different ways to play it. I also mentioned that in the post. You can level to 5 and just get lucky and just use that as a acceptable risk, where you say, okay, I just whiffed, I'm gonna die because I didn't hit the light fangs or anything to stabilize. But I think for a lot of people that are learning, that do not have our experience, our just vast amount of games, it can just be very frustrating, like it was for me when you're like, oh, what happened this game? Like, it was a ghost. I leveled to 5, or like he leveled, so I leveled with him. Like, I don't know, like, why did I die? And it's like, well, you didn't really have a very strong board, or you didn't have a good start. So what did you expect was going to happen when you went to 5 and the other guy's tripling into Eliza and you're not, right? Like, it's not going to be a good time. So yeah, I just said, okay, well, what then, right? And I was like, oh, well, I guess I just write about the things I do while I'm on 4, because I can already see telling people to stay on 4, be like, this 4 thing, it sucks, man. I usually play Menagerie. The Menagerie on 4 sucks, man. Like, what do you do instead of the Light Fangs? Like, well, no, you play very particular comps when you're on 4. So the 4 comps that I talked about, I'm not going to go like super in depth, of course, on the podcast.
Go for it. I mean, if you want.
Well, I mean, we'll give them a link, right, if they want to read. Right?
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, so the 4 comps that I covered were Taunt Comp, of course. I think that is the dominant one you play on 4. Then there is Mechs, which is oftentimes a bit of a mix of Taunt Comp, where you like, any time you have a module on something, Arm of the Empire becomes good. Even if it's only 1 unit, it's still good. And then eventually you find another module, or you Argus. Even your Deflectos. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've figured out, is that I think you want to get out of mechs and into taunt if possible, because it is just I've had so many top ones where my opponent was scaling like crazy, but I had 2 Deflectos in the back with a golden arm. The Deflectos are taunted. I have a golden champion, and then my front 2 or 3 minions are just resets. And I just slam into a 50 damage Deflecto shield, and then my egg dies. Whoop, here we go again. The Deflectors have their shield back. And it can be an insane amount of resets that you get if you're a little bit lucky with the attacks. So usually whenever I have a mech setup, if I have a mech setup with arm and I'll find an Argus, I'll just taunt my Deflectos and I'll get out of the traditional mech setup, and I'll just turn it into an arm comp. The third one would be Harbinger comp, which is something I never really took the time to properly words. It was always just something that I did, and it was like, well, what am I doing when I'm playing Harbingers? And that's where the Imp Mama came up as well, where it's like, oh yeah, well, the games where I do take number 1 with Harbingers on my board, it's pretty much just Harbingers, Acolyte of Cthulhu, Deflecto in the front, and then an Imp Mama somewhere in the middle, just soaking all those buffs and just keep going and keep summoning. And obviously Void Lord is also phenomenal if you're running Harbinger. And then the last one is the new addition to the tier 4 strategies with the Piggy meta. It's Ground Shaker comp, which to a large degree emulates Arm comp, which is just Divine Shields, and you have your Ground Shaker that you are funneling gems into to just be big. And I think that's also where that Flat Tusk love comes from right now, because I know that once you have a flat tusk and a ground shaker, it's extremely difficult to not top 4 because you're huge, right? Unless you are just blatantly not adding any decent buff targets, right? You might just have a bunch of regular boars, and you're like, oh, well, all my boars have high attack. It's like, well, yeah, all they need is 2 shields, right? And you're not trading well. But if you have, say, an egg with a module on it, and in front is a Hydra or something, and then you just pump a bunch of attack, well, yeah, you have a cleave and a big divine shield with a egg attached to it. You're gonna clean out most people, and it's only when you start meeting those extremely high roll guys that have more attack than you have when you've shakered your guys. It's like, okay, I see, like 60 health guys. That's way too much for me. So yeah, this comp has been really fun to play, the ground shaker comp, because it's Monka Steer, if I'd have to put it into, for anyone who's not too familiar with Twitch, you're just trying to navigate a very tricky spot where you have to sell units all the time because you need to create a buff slot where you can buy Sunbacon, sell Sunbacon, play the crystal, or pretty much any unit that produces blood gems. And a lot of the time that is, okay, so I've had this Thorncaller on my board for a long time, but now I need to sell it because Thorncaller inherently is a great minion for this composition because it's a gem generator, but it's not very good in the fight. And now I need to go all in. I need to replace it with a selfless or something like that. So yeah, that would probably be it. I guess that would tie me into what I wanted to talk about is Thorncaller in particular, about the boars. I forgot about it. That is a minion that really surprised me, where I am super happy buying this on tier 3, and I'm experimenting with buying it on tier 4. I usually have some pretty set rules of what I want to buy on what tier, and a lot of the time I try to avoid buying tier 3 minions on 4 unless it's something like crazy good, like an Arm or Deflecto. And Thorncaller, I'm seeing if I want to make that exception for that card as well, because it's so good on tier 3 when I buy it, because it just opens up a lot of these strategies where once you have a Thorncaller on your board, you can just buy Brute, you can just buy Shaker, you can use them on a Deflecto. Like worst case, your Deflecto is passively scaling. So yeah, I guess I'm rattling a little bit, right? But
it's perfectly fine.
All right. But that's the post. The post is essentially what happens when you don't get the nuts. What happens when you're not playing my Ebb and you're not tripling into 2/6 drops.
When you're not me.
Yeah, when you're not Collins, right? Collins game is every game is a double 6-drop game, right? But let's say you're a mere mortal, you're playing and you're just not getting what you usually win with, right? You don't get your early Light Fangs, you don't get your early Eliza or whatnot. What do you do then apart from just getting top 8 and saying, well, this Bob guy sucks, right? This is the plan B, I would say, right? This document is plan B. The title is Confessions of a Scammer, How to Gain MMR You're Not Supposed to. And I think that suits it up the best. In games where you're supposed to lose MMR, how do you turn that into a positive MMR game?
Yeah, and reading it myself, I think there's a lot of good tips, especially for someone like myself, right? I don't necessarily get the nuts every game, right? And I will do a lot of these strategies absentmindedly, right? I know I can't level here because I'll die. All right, I'm on 4. What do I do? Oh, Mech Serve available. I'll go Deflectos. Oh, I see a Quilboar. I can do Ground Shaker for a turn. Go there. Taunt comp. If I get that arm, let's go. Right. I just it's an absent-minded game plan that's very similar here, but I haven't put it into words. I've written guides before, but not recently, just because there's a lot of effort. You know how it is. But it is something that I think if you struggle, especially when you don't hit whatever you're looking for normally, I think this is a good read just to realize there's a lot more compositions out there than just the standard hit Caligos and win, right? Sometimes when you're looking at other people play, right, if they hit a Caligos, they play perfect. If they don't hit a Caligos, okay, there's some problems. They don't know what to do. Essentially, it becomes a struggle for their game plan. So just being aware that there's these minions in the shop. I can actually use them to make a comp that's pretty powerful. Okay, let's do it and be confident. Okay, I can do this and it'll do well, right? That's always good to have in the back of your head where it's like, okay, I can do this. Okay, I didn't get what I want, I could do this. So I didn't get what I want, I could do this, right? And the more comps you know, the more viable strategies you have, right? The likelihood you'll see a roll in the shop and be like, okay, there's direction. Whereas normally people see a roll in the shop and be like, roll again. Roll again. Okay, roll again. I'm dead now. like, you know, which, you know, sometimes when I'm tired, that's how I play. You know, I'm just rolling for a triple. I don't have it. I'm dead. All right, let's move on. You know, but the more confident you have with these kind of secondary strategies or even primary strategies, right? If you really like doing them, it gives you, it's definitely the difference between, you know, that extra 100 MMR a day or something like that whenever you play a lot. So I do think it was a really good read, so I wanted to put it in there. Anyways, next topic. I thought you were going to go into this topic already, but you haven't. So we can we can cleanly go into it.
Okay, clean transition, clean.
What do you do when there are no mechs in the lobby? You know, so this is a very interesting situation that comes up because mechs are. We've talked about this a little bit before, where
before, like to an extent, right?
To an extent, where like how sometimes you play differently because there's a minion type that is not available, right? Like we were talking about Murlocs in the previous example, where if there are no Murlocs, right, you could do a lot more crazy things. Battle Master becomes insane. You see more elemental games because there's no like Murloc punish where people just have like one poison Murloc and then bam, you know, right? So games are different because some minion types they have like specific unique things about them that other minion types can't emulate. So mechs are one of them, right? We're not talking about Murlocs, we're talking about mechs here. Mechs, they have the Divine Shield engine. They have the ability to give Amalgadon's Divine Shield. They have they're very good at tier 4, and they also very good at supplementing taunt comps and things like that. So you know, for me in particular, I look at it from like a Tavern 5, Tavern 6 perspective, right? Where it's not as bad because the real issue is like with Menagerie. That's where it really affects me, right? Where if I'm going Menagerie and there's no mechs, that's a lot of value I lose, right? Because if I go Amalgadon, I don't hit Divine Shield. Well, then it's not getting Divine Shield pretty much unless I have two more Amalgadons. Ooh, yeah. Every game that happens. So, you know, it basically means that Amalgadon doesn't have it. It means that it's a lot harder to get easy cleave. It's a lot harder to get easy Divine Shield for your composition. So when your Menagerie comp is like pirates, you know, dragons, sometimes elementals and stuff like that, right? You're not getting as many divines as you are, so your Menagerie comp doesn't look as like clean or strong, things like that, right? It's very good if you have like a Deflectobond and a Amalgadon with the Divine Shield reset. Then you can put the Deflecto first, then you go in, then the Amalgadon gets hit, the Amalgadon gives you the reset for your bot, and you're like, so clean, such a good Menagerie comp, right? When mechs gone, you don't have any of that. As well, it also makes the 6-drops a little bit weaker because Foe Reaper is pretty nice in terms of like giving you something early so that you can transition to a Menagerie or transition to just like some other composition. So I do miss that. Kangor doesn't really matter too much, and Sneeds and whatnot is not like a worst case scenario if there's no Sneeds in the pool. Right? It's really just the loss of Divine Shields from your Amalgadon and the loss of a clean Menagerie setup. But when it comes to tier 4, which, you know, Shady has a lot to talk about here, I think the impact is a little bit bigger.
Yeah. So I'll start with this, where if mechs are out and I do not get a high roll hero or a hero that facilitates high rolling, we're talking about Maiev, we're talking about Rafam, we're talking about Omu, we're talking about pretty much anyone that can either level, like I say anyone that can level. It's pretty much just Omu, maybe a Crag, maybe Bank or so, but let's just say Omu right now is the one that gets to just go to 5/6 and just buy things straight away. The rest is pretty much just trying to generate tier 1 pairs and then tripling. And then, Maev does that like no other right now with the hero power. Rafam still does it okay, right? And then you have a couple other heroes like your Jandis or your Hooktusk, right, that are really good at that. But if I don't hit any of those heroes and mechs are out, I'm like, oh, yeah, what am I going to do here? Right? It's like I'm instantly on the back foot. And that's why I dislike the Quilboar patch, not necessarily because I say like, oh, there's something wrong with Quilboars, because I actually kind of enjoy playing with them. I think that right now they're fair, and it's actually quite challenging to make the right play every turn. But the fact that 3 types are out really increases the frequency of, because the combination of not getting a great hero and mechs being out was not super often before the patch, right? When only 2 types are out, you'd be like, okay, well, it happened. Usually I didn't pay too much attention to it. I'd be like, all right, well, let's just try to high roll, right? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like Ysera is a lot of the times one of my go-to heroes, because I'm just like, all right, we make dragon pairs. Tier 4 isn't really a thing. Let's see if we hit the Cali, right? And that, I think I'm about 50-50 on those games. Or like 50-50 like first place, 58 place. It either works or it doesn't. But I don't think that's a great strategy, at least for me. Like, I don't enjoy playing like that, and I don't think it's great for MMR either. So, like, I'm just trying to figure out how to mitigate the damage, right, to my playstyle when I'm in a no mech lobby. And one thing that I have been trying is just really leaning into tier 1 pairs, even when I feel like, for instance, let's say there's 2 micro mummies in the shop. A lot of the time I will just freeze and I'll just hope that I get a token, or I'll hope that I get something to fix the. We're talking about,
but that's a mech.
Yeah. Okay. So whatever. Yeah. Good point. Right. You see how heavily I'm just leading mech, right? I'm like, oh, my right there. But rock pool hunters, right? We'll call them rock pool hunters, right? All right. So there's 2 rock pool hunters in the shop. Like, I'll be very, very inclined to just try to make that work. Say, okay, well, I know that, because what's the implication of mechs being out, right? Let's take that a bit further, because you might hear me like, well, why can't you just still do taunt comp and all that? Well, if you remove module, like, that is an insanely big nerf, right? Collins talked about how it's annoying to not be able to fix your Amalgadon. How about if it's annoying if you can't get your comp, right? This is like, a lot of the time you start off taunt comp by, oh, nice, I have a module on this thing, it's amazing. Now I can scale up my champion, now I can scale up my arm. That does not happen anymore. You cannot buy eggs, you cannot get the Flecto. If you're power leveling early, you cannot get a sensei, right? All these things do not happen anymore. So for me, the game feels like it is more, hit or die kind of meta. And the middle has been kind of cut out. Not entirely, right? There are games where you're just, oh, I just hit, Bulvar and Argus and Arm, and oh, I'm kind of just playing taunt comp anyway. But it is much harder to set up, and therefore it's just rarer to see that taunt comp or any other like super nice tier 4 strategy gets off the ground. I guess dragons and elementals are the next things you're looking at when mechs are out. If those are out as well, you're like, oh my god, because those are all the divine shields, right? So that's your bread and butter when you're playing tier 4 comp. Is a lot of the time you're just trying to do anything with divine shields, because ground shaker comp requires you to have divine shields to buff. Our arm comp obviously requires you to have divine shields to buff. And a lot of the tempo heroes, like a Kale likes to hit the divine shield, a Sarfang. I've actually been playing a little Sarfang here and there. He really wants the divine shield, the hero power, of course. So yeah, those non-mech lobbies for me, they are frustrating, but I'm trying to find a workaround. And right now, tier 1 pairs, even if I'm not someone like a Maev or a Fam, is what I'm leaning towards, because it feels like in those games you can either triple into a 4 and just get lucky, right? Like get your gold grubber, like we mentioned earlier, or maybe a really early bonker. But if you're strong enough, if you're, say, high rolling, you have your tier 1 pair and you just have spawn, then you might just want to turn that into a 6-up straight away, because other people are also less dominant in the mid game, because they are not going to have that moduled mech. They are less likely to have those really strong tier 4 units when mechs are out. They could still just have a high roll within a matron or something like that, but it feels like it's a little bit more doable in this game to just try to high roll. So then I try to pick a hero that facilitates that. So something like Sky Captain Crag, where I can just have my tier 1 pairs and then just, oh, here's my triple. Let me just use the piggy bank to level straight to 5, get the triple, pull a 6. So I'm essentially trying to avoid playing the heroes that I would normally play that I'm fine with, like a Kale, like a Sarfang, like anyone that facilitates taunt compensation. Syndragosa is another one. Syndragosa also really takes a big hit when mechs around.
I wonder if I want to take a look at like what's in the pool when I see everyone have a weak board. You know, I wonder if it's like mechs, dragons, elementals are out, and it's like, that's why everyone is weak. There are no divine shields this game. That is interesting because I do notice sometimes when I'm playing, there'll be some games where I just look at the end game and I'm like, that wasn't the strongest lobby I've ever seen. You know, and I've not like thought about what was missing. You know, what was missing in that game? Was it just mechs and dragons or whatever and things like that? And I bet that's probably the case where it's like mechs and dragons and stuff like elementals are gone. So like you're not seeing that mid game divine shield spike or something like that where people are just getting strong out of nowhere. So that's something I'll just take a look at when I play later on. So that's a good point there. But yeah, in terms of like just no mech lobbies, it does make some compositions a lot harder to do. Mech compositions for sure, but other taunts and things that rely on divine shields, right? There's a lot of comps these days that rely on divine shield just because divine shield's such a clean mechanic in that it's easy to get and powerful, right? If you have 2 Bulvars and 2 Deflectos and whatnot, right, you're gonna do decently well, right, up to a point where people start like scaling with like Caligos or whatever, right? But it's gonna be pretty powerful. So people do pick up those cards, right? You'll see people picking up Bulvars, whatever, right? Just because it's like a good unit standalone that you can like, if you find a different direction, you can easily switch out, or you can even keep for a little bit longer, just because it's not the worst thing to have on your board standalone. Where if you have divine shield synergies, so just losing that outcome, right? It does rely you on hitting those more powerful or easier directional pieces, right? Like it's why, you know, pirates and stuff like that do really well. You know, if you can get a scam, right? Those early tempo directional triples, right? That they can do really well in those lobbies because when you hit them, no one else has anything, right? So if you can that 1 turn or 2 turns of window where you hit the nuts, you can just like deal so much damage to people that don't have anything, and then you like games end really quickly, right? Like in some of those lobbies, I see games end like super fast because people die at the same time because they don't hit anything. They don't know what to go for, right? And then, you know, someone gets an early 6 or something, and then they have the nut comp, and they just smack people for 20. And then there's like 5 people left, right? And then 3 people left, and then it's like the top 2 that hit something, and then that's the game, right? So
in these lobbies, those are the turns like, and 3 people left.
Yeah. So if you can find some way of like not like. A lot of times that feels bad, but like I fought the ghost, yes, top 3. It's not bad, you know, where it's like, okay, I just need to survive to the point where I'm not dead, and then I fight the ghost, and then I that's my top 3 placement. Because you don't need to be strong, you just need to be strong enough to not get one shot, right? So sometimes like hitting that Boulevard and stuff like that is what will give you like that 5 extra health, right? So that you are fighting the dead person in the lobby, and then you go from there. So there's different strategies when you don't have direction and everyone's weak, right? Then you can like, it's hard to identify that, I would say, during the games. Like it's a lot easier like after the game to be like, oh, that's what happened, right? When there's no like clock running at your back and you're like oh, I don't know what I did, oh, what's my strategy,
You're not tunnel vision anymore. Yeah. You can take steps back and be like, oh yeah. Sometimes you have that as well. You're like, why was this unit still on my board? It's like, that should have been sold 2 turns ago. Okay.
Yeah, so it is particularly weird. I would say mechs are one of the more impactful removals, right? Tokens, very impactful. Next, impactful. Dragons are kind of impactful because they influence like your turn 3. They also influence your late game, right? Sometimes you'll get like a Bronze Warden or something, and you're like, okay, I can pick this up for a turn or whatnot, and then go from there. And sometimes you'll get a bronze, and then you'll switch into taunt comp. That happens to me a lot when I go taunt comp. I have a bronze, and then I'm like, oh, I'll taunt it, and arms, and that's enough for me, taunt comp. Like, that's enough direction. I'm taunting it. But without dragons, like, I don't see that a lot happening for me in my gameplay, where I just go like, oh, divine shield into taunt. So that influences me a lot. But they all have like their own specific things, right? Pirates, well, right? Sometimes a lot of times, like, pirates being out of the pool like affects me quite surprisingly, where I'm like, oh, I can't get Gold Grubber, I can't get Scallywag Eliza, I can't get the Money Pirate as well, right? The Money Pirate, sometimes I'm playing like my Ev or something, like one of the best hits, right? Just free 3 gold for 1 gold, right? So I can't hit that. So and then Swabby as well, right? Early game Swabbies can be really impactful on how you level. So there's quite a bit of influence for all the archetypes. I think the one that like is the least impactful or maybe even beneficial is like elementals. I think you'll maybe agree with that. At least for me, right? Because the 6 drops, right? That's 3 6s removed from the pool, right? So I'm like, oh, the 6 drops a lot nicer for me. So I can just go to 6 and see if I hit stuff, right? And I'm really only losing the Divine Shell Elemental, but there's a lot of replacements if Dragons, Mechs, and stuff are in the pool.
Another one is, even though I love it, Mama, I think Demons, right, as well, is where like, like, oh no, Demons are out. It's so like, oh, okay.
So some Demons are actually kind of useful for me, because if I struggle, that Battle Master is like my saving grace. Right. So I do like Demons for that one purpose. So when I'm saying, oh, Demons in the pool, oh, I can be risky. That's like sometimes my mentality, because I'm like, oh, I can hit that Battle Master, save me a little bit of health there, and go from there. So I do like that a little bit there. So there's
funny how that's such a different one, where for you it's Battle Master, for me it's Void Lord. When I'm playing Kiraji, I'm just like, oh, I can get a Void Lord, and you'd be like, well, I can't get a Battle Master, so I might have to be a little careful.
Yeah, so I think it's quite interesting how that goes there. But yeah, that's what we want to talk about here. And I think our last topic of the day will be prizes, revisiting prizes. There was a Twitter post I thought was interesting by Fino, where he was talking about how he found the game a lot less interesting after prizes were removed. And I think it's been a while since prizes have been in the meta, and I just thought it would be something I wanted to revisit, just discuss here, just to see what you thought about the prize meta. And now that things have passed, what do you think about if they had some type of reintroduction? Maybe not the same balance, right? I think balance was a key issue in why people found it frustrating. It wasn't like the mechanic itself, but just the balance around it, right? I found it weird that they didn't adjust anything throughout the whole 2+ months. They didn't change any of the prizes. They didn't remove any prize or anything like that. But I personally thought the prizes were interesting, right? It reminded me of some of the other auto battle games where you have items and stuff like that, where that could influence some of the units that you have on the board. You can give them different attack, you give them health or whatever, and things like that, and that would like affect the game a little bit, right? Some games like TFT, right? The whole game is revolved around some of the items you give it. Like there are heroes that, there are minions that don't exist if you don't have those specific items that on those specific units. Then they don't do anything. But if you have the items, then they're a unit. So it's not to that degree here, where as long as you have the right units and you have the right setup, right, all the units do some type of jobs. But I did like the thought process required in some of the prizes, right? The issue was that the meta became, you need this prize. You need this prize. if you don't have this prize, you are behind. You're very, very behind. Okay, you're gonna struggle now. That was the issue. There were too many swingy. Well, there was a couple swing prizes in each of the tiers where if you got it, you had a huge advantage. If you didn't get it, you were the sucker. That kind of thing. So that was like the main issue, right? The balance, but the idea of prizes, I was okay with. I enjoyed some of the prizes, especially early on, before we knew what was the nuts, right? Just thinking about, oh, what about this? What about that? Oh, what about this? What about that? Right? And then reacting to some of that and be like, oh, I can't do this. Or I really liked how there were some heroes that became significantly more viable with the prizes in, right? That extra gold you would get sometimes in the early game would allow for some stupid stuff. I remember Alex Strauss in particular, where I would you start with a token, and you level, then you level again, level again, right? And normally you can't do that because you have nothing to sell on your board. But with that extra 2 gold, you're like, oh, okay, just use the gold. Yeah, and it's fine. And then you can get like a super early, like double Razor Gore setup, and you're already on 5, and it's like very clean, right? And that was really cool to see. But I like that kind of thing where it's like, oh, this hero normally very struggles here, but can work with these introductions of like mechanics that you can't get anywhere else, right? You can't get 2 gold for free just playing the game normally. So I did like that, but the issue was the balance. At least for me, the issue was definitely the balance. In some ways, there was no adjustments or anything, and it was very obvious that if you got the on the house on the way, it was super strong. If you didn't, you struggled.
I think I'm not sure if that's just a Blizzard type thing where they just enjoy having a big range between their cards to just say, well, you feel really good when you get lucky and that's cool. Or whether it's just like, well, I thought that giving something +5/+5 was about as good as discovering a 6-drop. So, right, I'm assuming that it's like a bit of a combination of two, where they're like, well, this is probably close enough. We know that it's weaker. But then, when it's put into work, it's like, well, you're pretty much getting on the house or Evolving Tavern, or that other prize is just dead, right? Like a coin, really? I'm getting 1 extra gold this turn and next turn. Like, who gives a shit when you have this massive spike that can happen? So, as you mentioned, the balance was the problem. It was such an insane discrepancy. Same thing with the early prize as well. Like, there was flag and then there was the rest, right? If you got Might of buffing your board +1/+1, you were fine. You were chilling. You were power leveling, no problem. At least with the coins, you could salvage a bit, like you said. And I did enjoy playing with the coins, the extra money. But then if you miss on those two, you're like, oh my god, I guess I'm taking Gachi Gift and I'm trying to.
Gachi Gift was kind of coins in this. Sometimes you go for tokens.
Sometimes even better when, let's say, you had 2 1-drop pairs. You're like, ooh, Gachi Gifts looking really good here, right? I might get a triple. So it is true. But there were just a couple of things that were just not acceptable, right? There was the thing where you increase the health of the minions in the tavern. I know you kind of liked it, or maybe didn't completely, but let's be honest, compared to the cards you mentioned, it's just not a thing.
I had a 1/8 Baron. What are you talking about? That was so good. It would feel even worse now with all the blood gems, right? Like in the game that you're just like, oh, this is like half a blood gem. How useless. But yeah.
Sure. And then there's the like we're not really talking about these super end game prizes, because the most influential prizes are the one that's on 4 gold and right, like those 2 make or break your game.
And ice block. And I want to give special.
If you made it to round 12, then absolutely, ice block was a huge deal. But it was like, for anyone who wasn't around or didn't play as much during the prize meta, this was our game plan. 100% was get to tier 5 by the time the turn 8 prize round, so that if you were offered on the house, you could push 6 and on the house. Yeah. And if you did not get on the house, damage control. Like, that's pretty much, like, I don't want to say like every game, but the vast majority of your games was very binary, right? Like, do what you can to get to tier 5 in whatever, decent shape, which was a lot easier back then.
Because everyone was doing it.
Right? Everyone was leveling. People were not spam rolling on 4, right? That was not a thing.
There was no
Everyone was
top
leveling.
comp.
Yeah, and then it was like, okay, those that have hit on the house and those that didn't, right? You also had Evolving Tavern where you could just be like, all right, let me just roll for a couple fives in the tavern and then hit a good evolving. But most of the time it was on the house. And then you would have those turns where then on turn 9, your opponent would have 2 Elizas. You'd be like, what the, how do you have 2 Elizas? And I was like, oh, well, I on the house one of them, and then I'm Elise, so then I mapped the other one. That was the craziest, right? The craziest thing was Elise's map was 2
and then
gold.
I tripled as well.
Yeah, this is crazy, because you would have Elise mapping for 2 gold, and then on the house is 0 gold. So you would level, you sell something off the board, you would map, you get an Eliza, you're on the house, gives you an Eliza. So insane. So to come back to the original point, of course, reminiscing a little bit, talking about how broken they were. Yes, the basic premise was fun. I think it was cool. But do you trust Blizzard to implement that in a balanced fashion? Because the prize meta was at the end definitely felt like very high rolly, where, okay, I feel like I've kind of seen it now, right? Where, okay, the game plan is get to 5, be able to level for on the house. If I don't hit on the house, damage control. And like the game felt pretty one-dimensional. Even though you added more things, I feel like it detracted because you pretty much had to do that, or you couldn't compete with the other people that, hit on the house and went for a 6.
I guess that is the main question, right? Will Blizzard implement it correctly? Huh? That's a good point, right? Like, I would.
You want to roll that dice, right?
I would much rather not have the prize meta again over just the meta we have now, right? So that is a good point. But if they could implement prizes in a balanced way, or if they could get a quick response, right? I do like it when they have adjustments quickly when things are out of whack, right? Like 2 months of the same issue is like really not acceptable in terms of like having a good, clean, balanced game, right? Like you can't wait that long to make these changes, right? You see the Quilboar patch, right? Like the next week, right? Then a lot of changes, right? And it feels a lot better, right? If they could do that kind of thing with the prize meta, where they balance a week and then like 2 weeks later they balance again, right? And I'm then hopeful, right? I would be hopeful, but if it was a repeat of what it was before, just maybe less swingy prizes, right? I wouldn't like it, right? You have to make sure you make adjustments because you're not going to get that perfect balance the first time around. There's too many players and too many people know how to abuse situations you give them to just allow that to go. So
people will find the statistically best thing, right? And then like sometimes that turns out that it's quite a bit better than the next best thing. So we want to nerf that a bit.
Yeah. But I thought it was something interesting to talk about since, they had a Twitter post and a lot of people in the community was agreeing or saying, yeah, it was pretty interesting to have the prize meta. And I agreed with them while I was reading through. Just like, I do think the prize meta showcased some other avenues of adjustments, right? Because really with Battlegrounds, right, all the expansions have been new cards, new tribe, and that's it, right? Like there hasn't been any like fundamental differences with the game since it's come out, right? Sometimes you'll have like with expansions a new way of playing something, right? A new way of utilizing your cards or having like spells or whatever. I don't know, just giving random abilities, right? I do think the blood gems have been kind of different in that way, where you're getting spells in your hand that you can adjust it differently, right? So they are experimenting a little bit in like unique, but it's still kind of like the fundamental different archetype has a different mechanic that makes them uniquely them, right? And it's not like you're changing how the game works in any fundamental way. So I do think prizes were one attempt to do that, and I think they were in theory good, just the way it was implemented wasn't the best. But I just wanted to bring it up. I think it was interesting, and I wanted to see if I'm
definitely down for another test, right? If they want to like revisit that concept, I don't think that's something they have to do one time and then just completely drop it. So it's like, oh, that was just unique to the Dark Moon expansion.
It reminds me of a dual class arenas in a way, where it's like, oh, that was different, but it still wasn't too bad. I didn't hate it the next year around or things like that.
Yeah, that one. They were pretty much excited every time it
Yeah.
would around, right? So yeah, if only just like a yearly thing, just to have it cycle at some point, like, oh, prizes are coming back, or something like that.
I mean, it could be more than that. I mean, a yearly thing, that's a long time, dude.
I mean, that would be prizes, right? They could add something else that's seasonal, right? Where
Yeah, okay.
you don't need to put bells and whistles on everything the whole time, but from time to time, a little bit of variation is nice. Like I'm fine playing the same thing over and over if it's semi like this meta. I think right now is fine. Like I don't think there's anything that stands out. We're like, oh, it's like Maiev is obviously crazy good, and certain things are annoying to play against. But like right now, I'm having a ton of fun just figuring stuff out.
Sounds good. But yes, will be our top. You know, every time I make these topics, I'm like, these are short. Almost every day, and then we're doing it. I'm just like, it's been a while. It's like an hour and a half. I thought this would be like an hour 10 or something like that.
You got to do is like shady mechs are out. I'm like, what's 20 right there?
But yes, that shall be our podcast for this week. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Shady, for being here every single week, keeping things consistent. I appreciate you guys' feedback. Don't forget to send us feedback at hsbgpodcast@gmail.com. And you reach us on Twitch. Yep, that's it. Anything you got for us?
Thank you so much for listening, guys. Always good to be here. Thank you so much for setting everything up every week, Collins. It's so much fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Just a little recognition. Oh, thanks. Anyways, I agree. And take care of yourselves. Have a rest of your good days for everyone else listening. And I will see you guys next week, folks.